Hi, I'm Josh, and I'm putting up a 30 by 72 foot high tunnel from Zimmerman's High Tunnels. The one I'm putting up has 5-foot sidewalls and just a straight truss in the arch, and I'm doing the wooden end walls on it, and it's got 3 rows of purlins with 6-foot spacing on the arches. So there's a lot of variations of these high tunnels, so if yours is different than this one, some of the measurements are going to be different also. So first, Dan is going to help us with squaring and orienting a hoop house site.
Now when you first set up your site for your greenhouse, you want it to run east-west so you get most of your solar gain. The way that the sun tracks in the fall and the winter, the angle of the sun will go lower in the south. So the slope of your hoop will give you better light penetration because of the angle. Your sun's going to be hitting more at a direct angle, and it's going to be at a longer length. So you're going to get more heat gain into your high tunnel that way. And there are some situations where your lot is such where you have to run it north-south, and that's okay. It's not the biggest loss, but it's preferred to run it east-west. If you're doing season extension, it's going to give you more heat in your greenhouse for your plants to use. Now, as we're looking at our layout here, we have a little bit of a slope here, and you don't always have to be level. It can save you some money by not having to pay an excavator to come out and level your site. So this has a drop, and we'll just go with the slope without going for level on this situation. If it was steeper, you might want to go, you don't have to go exactly level, but you could have one side, like this side, could be raised a little higher. But in this case, we're just going to go with the slope of the land. Now, when you do orient your high tunnel, you want to get a good quality compass, much more accurate. So in this case, we're doing the simple method of using a compass, and we're looking at magnetic north here. So we put in our first stake in the ground on the south, this is our southwest corner here, and we're looking at magnetic north. And so you can look through this eyepiece here and line up. We can line up a pole on the other side, and that pole on the left, the green one, that shows you magnetic north. And then if you take into account the declination, which gives you true north, the pole to the right is over about 2 feet, and that's in close proximity to what true north would be. As you can see on this piece of cardboard, we put the compass on here, and then we drew the line for magnetic north, and then we drew a line for true north. And so you can look through here, you can look through this piece here, and then you can line up, eyeball, have another person hold that pole and tell them where it lines up. And this slot here will give you that perspective. Okay, so once we've established our true north line here for the end wall, your 30-foot section, and we have our 2 stakes in the ground for each corner, then we're going to use the 3-4-5 method to square off the rest of the high tunnel. Okay, the first step we're going to do here for the 3-4-5 method is measure 30 feet, which is with your high tunnel. And then this side wall here, this will be 40 feet. And then your angle from that side should measure 50 feet. So you have 30, 40, and 50, which translates to the 3-4-5 method of squaring. Okay, when I lay out these tapes, when I pull them together and I match where 40 feet and 50 feet line up. And that's where we want to put a stake there to mark it. And after this marker's in, we'll go back 4 feet and put a marker at 36 feet, which is the halfway point. This is a 72-foot long high tunnel. And we'll do the same on the opposite side. Okay, now we stretch this out to 72 feet. I'm going to try to keep it in line with that middle stake. And we'll pound this in at 72 feet for a marker. And then we'll come back, and when we get the other side done, we'll do a diagonal to double check this one, and sometimes we have to move it a little bit to get it to be accurate. So when you do your diagonal measurement from that corner to this corner, it should be 78 feet. And then from the other corner to the opposite corner should also be 78 feet. Then you know you have your high tunnel square. Right at 78. So we should be square. We'll double check our distance across here at 30 feet. And if that's true, we're done with squaring.
The next step is pounding in and leveling the sidewall posts. So what I did is I pounded in the 4 corner posts, and then I put a string along the edge so that when we measure out and mark them all, we can keep everything straight. So then what you want to do is lay out your tape measure and mark every 6 foot on center where your posts are going to go. And then we will pound them in. This is a sidewall post. You measure 32 inches from the bottom or 4 feet and 4 inches from the top. That's where you're supposed to pound it into. The other thing I do is I run a string across the top of the 2 corner posts that you already have in, and you just pound them all down to that level, as long as the string is straight and tight. There's several different ways of pounding in the sidewall posts. I'm just going to use them all. Now if I took this post and just tried to pound it in here with my soil, I'm not going to get it in. I have a lot of gravel and stone, and the ground is very hard underneath the topsoil. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it in several steps. First I take a spear and I'm going to pound this in to the right depth. Now as you're pounding it in, you want to keep hitting it to keep it loose. If you keep doing that as you're pounding it in, it usually comes out pretty nice. And then what I'm going to do is pour some water down the hole. And then I'm going to pound in another one that's a little bigger. This one's about 1.5 inches. I have some marks on here so I know how deep to go in. And as you're pounding, you want to make sure it goes in nice and straight, and keep loosening it up as you keep pounding it in so that you can pull it out. As long as it goes in nice and straight, your sidewall post should end up fairly straight too once you get it in. Now I'm going to pour some water in here again, and I'm going to keep doing that down the row until all the holes are ready for the 3rd stage, and then you come and pound in the sidewall post, and it goes in a lot easier. So now I have all the holes pounded, and the water had time to settle and soak in. So now, before I put my top string up, I'm going to pound in the center post because it's a long span, and this way I'll pound this one in first to the correct height, and then I can just put the string across the top of it so it only has to span half as far, and that'll keep everything a lot straighter. When you're pounding in the sidewall posts, remember to use the stake pounder provided so that you don't wreck the top of the post and the hoops can slide down on top of here. So the center post is in. Now I'm ready to put up my string. So I have my string up now. What I do is I have posts on either side so that I can have the string going right on the edge and level with the top without actually touching it. So that all I have to do is pound in the remaining posts level with both strings down to the level that the string is. On the center, I have a thin piece of tin holding up to the right level so that it doesn't droop in the long span. So now I'm ready to pound in the remaining sidewall posts. For lack of anything better, I stand on my three-wheeler. Another method of pounding the posts in, sidewall posts, is a ready driver or a gas-powered post pounder. It kind of simulates a pneumatic driver, so it pounds more often, a little softer on the post. It gets them in nicely, but it doesn't cause the stress or bulging on the top of your posts that a maul might. If you have a lot of rocks or something, it might not work. Otherwise, normal ground, it works quite well. So we're going to demonstrate putting a post in here with it. And when you get done pounding the posts in, they should be straight across the top and on the side. Now the sidewall posts are all in. Now we're ready to start assembling and setting up the arches. Now to build the arches, first I put in 2 posts at 30 feet apart so that we can just put the ends of the arches up against there and they'll be 30 feet when we're done building them. Then, get a clamp. We slide a clamp on for the cross brace. Put that on. And we can put the arch together. After you get the arch put together and the ends are at 30 feet, we're going to put some screws in these joints here. We're going to put 3 screws in each connection. We're not going to put any on the top because that'll tear the plastic, so we're going to do 1 on each side and 1 on the underside. We're going to start with the 2 underside screws and the 2 top screws. Then we're going to put our cross brace in and turn it over and put the other 2 screws on the other side. Now for the arch brace, I put in 2 stakes at the right measurement. So I just line up the clamps with the 2 stakes, and then it'll be centered so that when you have all your hoops together, it'll be straight across. We're going to put those on next. Now after you have your clamps tightened up on your cross brace, we want to put a Tek screw in the clamp itself so that it doesn't slide if it ever gets loose. Then we're ready to stand it up and put the 2 screws on the bottom side of the joint up here yet. And on the 2 outside arches, you're going to put the C-channel that the wiggle wire goes into to hold the plastic on. And we found out it's a lot easier if you put that C-channel on the outside bows while it's still on the ground. Instead of using ladders and doing it up there, it's a lot easier to put it on while it's on the ground and then set it up and you're ready to go. Also, you will want to know how you're going to build your outside walls or your end walls because underneath the C-channel, before you put the C-channel on, you'll need to put your brace clamps that hold the upright posts, because those go on first, then your C-channel over that. And if you get all that figured out, when you set up your bows or arches, it'll be all set to put the plastic on when you get to that point. Now for your end wall arches, first you want to know what you want your end walls to be like, your door sizes and all that stuff. For my end walls, I just made a sketch of how I wanted them to turn out, just to kind of get an idea of how they are going to look and function. But there's a lot of different ways you can build them. Some use overhead garage doors, some custom build them like I'm doing, but pretty much just build them to best suit your needs. Also, to help visualize a little bit better of how it's going to look, I laid mine out on the ground. That helps you get a little better picture and get your measurements a little more accurate. Now on these end wall arches, first we're going to put all the clamps on that hold the upright 2x4s, roof bracing, and purlins. And on the purlin clamps, you can attach the purlin starters right away also. And once you have all your clamps on, then we're ready to put on the C-channel. Now first we're going to take a piece of C-channel and mark the center of it, which is 4 feet. And that's where we're going to make a bend in it. So the mark goes on the peak of the arch, and then we're going to bend it to fit the arch. You can kind of round it a little bit. Now for putting on the C-channel, it helps if you pick the hoop up a little bit. Now you want to start on the peak of the arch for this piece. Then we can work our way down. So as we're putting the C-channel on, we want to make sure that we keep it centered along the top of the arch. And then we're going to space the screws about 12 inches or a foot apart. So now we're going to put one more piece on each side, and that will get it low enough so that it's easier to reach from the ground. Now if you're doing it by yourself, it works pretty good to use a cable tie or a zip tie to hold the one side. While you work on the top. So you want to make sure you line your seams up real good so that it doesn't tear your plastic. So I have my top 3 pieces of C-channel on now, and once we stand the arch on the sidewall posts, it's fairly easy to reach from the ground to put on the 2 remaining pieces of C-channel on the sides. Now after you have the arches built, if you want to keep your purlins nice and straight, you can mark the underside of the arches where you want them to go before you put them up. So if we measure from the splice, the center purlin, which is in the peak of the arch, is going to be at 29 3/4 inches. And then the 2 side purlins, if you measure from the splice, you can make the mark at 69 1/4. Now before you put up your first end wall arch, we're going to take a purlin and put it on the center purlin starter. Then we're going to measure from the center of the end wall arch up the purlin, and we're going to mark it at 6 feet. That's where your next arch is going to connect. After we have it marked, we'll take it off, and we are going to take a purlin strap, and you just line the hole up with the mark that you made. And we're going to screw that on there. That way, when you set up, when you want to put it onto your arches, you just screw the strap to the center of the next arch that you put up. And everything should be the correct distance apart. So after you have your first mark made, you can temporarily slide more pieces of purlin together and keep marking every 6 feet. Then you're going to come and put all your clamps on. It also helps if you lay it on a board so that all the clamps are straight with each other. Now for putting up the arches, if you're having trouble sliding them on, it helps to spray a little WD-40 around it. That'll help it slide on better. And there's several different ways to put up the arches. One grower made an arch raiser that just was on a trailer, and you can pick it up and set the arch on. Or if you have some help, you can just pick it up. One person can have a 2x4 or a 2x2 with a fork on it like that to help steady it up on top. And you can just set them on. Another way to put the arches up, if you have a tractor with a loader on it, you can set the arch in the loader and use that to raise it up, and just have a person on either side to guide the arch onto the sidewall post. So as you're setting up the arches, it's a good idea to put the center or peak purlin in while you're putting them up to keep them all together. Before you start putting the purlin on though, you want to make sure your end wall arch is nice and level, the best you can get for the time being. What I used is some string with stakes just to hold the end wall arch level as we put the rest on, and eventually you'll put your roof bracing on, or arch bracing, but that's after we put the sidewall boards on. So this is temporary to hold everything level while you put the center purlin on, because if everything's kind of crooked, it might be hard to straighten it afterward. So if you're putting the center purlins on by yourself, as I'm doing, it works pretty good to put the ladder up high enough that you can rest it on there, and that way you don't have to hold it or have someone else hold it. Remember to put one Tek screw in each of the connections here to keep the pipes together and from pulling apart. And then we can continue putting up arches and the center purlin until we get to the end. Also, it's a good idea to keep measuring every now and then to make sure that your arches are still 6 foot apart and that they're fairly level yet. Now I'm going to measure from the center of the third arch 12 feet to the center of the last arch, end wall arch that is, and I'm going to hold this in the right spot while I mark where this purlin needs to be cut off. When you're marking the purlin to cut it off, remember to mark it at the bulge of the pipe where the pipe is going to slide onto, so you don't cut it off too short. Then we can take it back down and cut it off on the ground where it's a little easier. And when you come to put it up, this one's already in the right spot, and all your arches should be evenly spaced 6 feet across the whole hoop house. So now we have all our arches up and the center purlin on. Now that we have our arches up and the peak purlin in, we are going to install our sidewall corner bracing. So first, you want to make sure the posts are nice and level, the two end ones that we're going to put the brace from. That one's level already. This one is not quite level. So what I do to level them is I just take a ratchet strap and you can just tighten it up until it gets to the right spot. Now these straps here, we're going to have to bend open a little bit to get them on, and then bend them back shut. And we are going to install these corner braces 3 inches up from the splice where the arch hooks onto the sidewall post. Also, you want to make sure you put your bolt with the bolt sticking inward so that you don't hook your sidewall curtain. So then we want to measure 3 inches up. So I need to go up a little bit. And we can tighten it there. And then we're just going to hook the bottom brace on. Also, as an extra precaution, I put a Tek screw in each of the bands to keep them from sliding up and down on the pipe. So now we have our sidewall corner bracing in. And as long as you have your outside arches level and the peak purlin in, keeping all the arches 6 feet spaced evenly apart, we are ready to put in the 3 screws that hold the arches to the sidewall posts. So when we're putting the 3 screws in, we want to remember to put 1 screw on each side and then 1 on the inside of the hoop house, leaving the outside smooth, because your sidewall curtain is going to be here and we don't want to put anything there that might snag or tear it.